Reno. I'm an information developer at IBM, and I also, that's basically a word for a technical writer. I write about IBM Watson and how to connect that to different data repositories. I also put a lot of stuff for Pittsburgh Dataworks in the Data Jam on our website. And just to bring it to your attention, it's kind of hard to see because of these markers up here, but it's pghdataworks.org. I would highly encourage everyone to check that out. I plan to put a lot of content that I generate from, like, get-togethers like this, and as we learn new insights, as we make progress along the timeline for the Data Jam, I'll put more and more information out there. We also have a Twitter account at PGH Dataworks. I appreciate anyone who would like to follow us. Last year, a number of the participating teams, they seemed to like that, I would post updates and things of that nature, and it was a nice way to stay in touch. You can always, tweet us anything interesting, that sort of thing. Always appreciated. And we also have a Facebook page, PGH Dataworks. Would like to get at least 15 more likes so we get up over 100, and I can start looking at some analytics. They don't give that to you unless you have 100. So there's enough people here, I hope I'm over 100 by next week. In any case, I'm here to talk about the proposals and what that involves, what are some keys to having good proposals, and what you should be thinking about, that sort of thing. And some traits of proposals that were very successful last year, and well, I'll get into that. I know everyone's hungry too, so I won't bore everyone to death, hopefully not. Okay, so this is just a general overview of the timeline and kind of like the process itself. The whole idea, pretty much the whole Data Jam experience is going to start with a proposal. It's a one-pager. That should be submitted by January 5th. The one-page proposal really describes the problem that you're interested in studying, its importance, its relevance that you feel that it has. You can then add comments about data you think you'll need, and whether that you believe that data will be hard to get or whatever. I think the key is that you want to be very interested in what you're proposing to study for the Data Jam. And so when you start off, keep that in mind. Don't be limited to data sets that you don't feel that are that interesting to you or whatever. Start with a very creative idea. Become very interested in what you're attempting to compare, what insights you want to draw. Start with something that really interests and engages your team, and that will set you up for a great Data Jam experience. The data availability, we will, through the Pitt Science Outreach partnership we have, and the other members here that are helping with the Data Jam. With data, that can be problematic if you don't have a really good data set. So you want to try to identify data sets that will be somewhat, manageable. You don't want to be spending 60% of your time trying to make a data set work for you. So start with a very interesting idea, something that engages your team. We can help you find the right data. We can point you in directions of the data sets we have. The other idea is that maybe you won't have a great, you propose something that's interesting, you have your data sets, you provide them to us, we look at it, and Raja or another one of our data analysts here may say, well, you're going to run into problems with this data set for whatever reason. So in the back of your mind, have a plan B in mind. If there's, try to come up with maybe, a similar type of idea that you think might be worthwhile investigating. If you get together with your teams and you brainstorm ideas, you'll probably have 2 or 3 really good ones. One may be the most popular, but keep one of those other ones in the back pocket. And as you can see here, the Data Jam proposals, must be approved by January 15th to keep everyone on schedule. Yes?
So a question about the order of things here. Like, when we propose the question, do we need to know where all the data is gonna come from? You said you'll help with that, like, is that before the January 5th, or is that after we submit the proposal, you would then give us some ideas of where to find that data?
We will provide links, or we won't. Simone will answer this.
The idea is that when you select your problem, you have done some research and know that the data set has it. So when you are evaluating the question you want to address, you're welcome to reach out to us and say, we're looking for data. Do you have it? Can you help us? And then make sure, yeah. But what we found is that in the past, teams selected a problem without looking at data, and then they couldn't find the data, and then they had to go back and redo the problem or totally, change direction. So that's why this is something that we're really stressing this time around, that make sure that the data is available, and we're willing to help out, but you have to do the research before the proposal.
Very well. The other thing we would like to stress when you come up with a proposal, and I do have some proposals that were part of the Data Jam last year for everyone to kind of look at and see what we felt were like good proposals, and the ones that I have for you to reference. Each of these, they finished in the top 5 last year, and we believe in hindsight it's because it really starts with a good proposal. If you kind of get off on the right foot, almost all the other steps will come together for you. So you want to have something very interesting to kind of to get you headed down the right path. And if you put that into place, then your investigation will just proceed a lot smoothly. And when in the end, when the Data Jam presentations and posters are all judged, the judges have tended to, in hindsight, favor a lot of the proposals that we deem to be very well. So we'll get into a little bit about what some of these better proposals look like. And so generally speaking, we believe the winning formula, good proposal is going to be a good Data Jam experience. And a good proposal centers around essentially a good research question. That's the one nugget within the proposal is, sort of a 1 or 2 sentence concise statement about, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're interested in studying the crime rate in like Allegheny County versus, the number of babies. Okay, I don't know. Whatever you find really interesting. So the key is to build a good proposal, you need to have a good, concise 1 or 2 statement research question part of that. So a good research question will generate a good proposal, which equates to having a really good Data Jam experience. So these are just some tips and observations that we're able to share now that we have 1 or 2 of these under our belt, and we feel it's it'll be very helpful for those of you that are new to this, especially that spend some good time thinking and conceptualizing a good research question that's engaging, and I think you'll find that it'll really set you up for a great experience for yourself and for your students. Okay, I will go over just a couple quick examples of some of the top 5 research proposals from last year that actually finished in the top 5 when the Data Jam was finally completed. And I'm going to pass out. I'm going to talk briefly some parts of these proposals. You don't have to read the whole thing now, or you can. And what I'll do is I'll take, if you just want to take one and pass it down, and just keep this going. And you can reference these later when you can see that you're really not locked into a format. Some of the examples I provided, some of them are structured, some of them are just like a 1 or 2 paragraph narrative, what we're going to do. But the key is that no matter how they're formatted, they kind of hit upon the things that we think are very important. So, these are kind of good ones to kind of look at. Okay, so you asked at Plan B, do you need a full proposal? No, you don't really need to have that fully fleshed out, but maybe kind of a general idea about like, well, if this data is, if your first suggestion proves problematic and, you know, we don't think it's a good choice to do for whatever reason, you know, then you can kind of jump into the mode of like, well, let's build out another.
Yeah, so first of all, you know, we don't reject, so the likelihood of us saying you can't do this is non-existent. The only reason would be if there isn't data set. So if you reached out to us and we said there isn't data set, then you should be able to, before you've submitted a proposal, move to another idea. So that's just what it means, is explore a couple of ideas as you are doing the brainstorming and have a backup in case you're not able to find the data for the first problem or idea that you guys selected. Yes.
So are companies pretty willing to share their data?
So no companies, no.
Okay, so
This is very much data sets that are available online. So
Okay.
we have a document that, you know, we have and we will share with you, which has a
Okay.
list of many data sets for Pittsburgh, outside Pittsburgh, many topics. That does not mean that they're all usable and easily, you know, in a usable format, which means they're not in CSV or Excel. Some of them could be in PDF documents. But we have, you know, there's so much data available on the web. It's more than you really need. But where the challenge comes is that if you're looking for that specific data set that completely matches your requirements, that's not going to happen, which is why the exercises and the student training session would be very helpful in knowing how to take something that's not exactly matching what you need and, you know, sort of massage it and work it to make it, make some assumptions and make it work for your problem.
thank you.
And one of the examples that you should have is this proposal last year, which I kind of called the books versus crooks kind of proposal. And it was really a comparison of academic programs versus crime rates in a given area. And largely what it involved was doing a comparison of like schools that had a lot of AP courses and activities and other extracurricular programs. Was there a correlation with like local crime rates? And so this team was very interested in, you know, investigating that and making any recommendations on any correlations that they discovered. Part of that, which is what I would kind of classify as like the research question part of their proposal. Do public high schools in Allegheny County offer more extracurricular activities? Sports, clubs, broad range of courses, you know, how does that compare to lower crime rate, better academic performance? And that's kind of front and center. If you study that particular proposal, you'll see that that's concisely, clearly stated. They then go on to explain why they found that interesting. This is just a summary of some things that I took from their proposal. And again, this is a good one to analyze because this one in particular actually came in first place last year. And when we went back and really looked at it, it seemed to be, from the start, they were off on the right path. It was just a very clearly well thought and organized approach from the beginning. Another key aspect that I think kind of stands out in a good proposal is why we should care about this proposal, what's really important about it. There is, at least in my opinion, a difference between, you know, investigations that are like merely interesting or actually important, like what kind of recommendations might our investigation result in, what are we expecting to find, what do we think we're going to discover, and, you know, what could we possibly recommend if we do discover that. So those are all things to think about a little bit, because even if you can find a correlation that is, you know, evident, but is it an actionable correlation? Can you really make any sort of recommendation, whether it's for a company, a policy, a city, you know, what can come out of that? So you know, I've always found that to be a particularly important part of any data analysis is, you know, how usable will your research be in the end. Any questions on this so far? So this is kind of a step forward a little bit when they go into the rubric and how the Data Jam team presentations and findings will all be judged. But I just wanted to highlight this because, again, this was a team that came in first place last year, and this kind of hints about the weighting of pretty much all the weighting for different parts of their Data Jam experience are equal, except for one, which is the research question, which is the most heavily weighted. So again, I think that that is evident in these proposals, and if the judges are impressed with sort of like the research question, then I think you stand to do well, you know. And so that's, you know, when we look back at this, we found that interesting. Yes, Simone?
No, I just wanted to add. So, two things. First of all, in the rubric, you'll see the research question has a higher weight than everything else. So this is very important. And the second thing is, this is the first piece, pretty much, that the judges see about your team. And the advantage that the teams that did well had over here was so much because the weighting is more, they scored high, that even though there were other teams that did really well in the final presentation, their analysis was excellent, they still were not able to make up that difference. So those teams were a little less rigorous in the proposal that they submitted. Their proposal was very brief, incomplete, did not cover all the items that Matt shared, and so their score here was lower, and it just wasn't enough to cover up. So this is a very, very important step, what we have found now after doing these, in terms of doing well in the Data Jam.
What would be an example of maybe a bad research question?
So I'll tell you, it wasn't that there was a bad research question, it's the amount of detail, you know, why is it important? How are we going to find the data? Where are we going to look for it? What challenges do we expect? What kind of impact? Just thinking.
So it's mostly the overall proposal?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, some of them were really literally 2 sentences that
Right.
were going to say, and that was it. So that doesn't show, when you have comparison with something that's done well, then that looks a
Sure.
little more.
Yeah, and again, I think the idea there is, you know, if it's kind of an observation about data that really can't make any recommendations or affect any change about it, to me that's kind of, you know, at least in my mind, a lower sort of insight.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was just the question, because then you don't know, you know what I mean? If it's just a question and you don't know if they actually found great data to maybe make some correlation that could have been very interesting. But if it's the whole proposal, that makes a lot more sense.
Sure. So one of the other top 5 finishers from last year, the Ella School, they did a comparison, an investigation, number of liquor licenses and how that correlates to crime in certain areas. If there's more bars, is there more crime, that sort of thing. One of the things that stood out from their proposal is, again, like a very concise and clear research question that was kind of stood out. They proposed to examine the correlation between the number of bars in an area and the rate of crime. And they cited, you know, what kind of inspired them to do this investigation. They also described why they're interested in this. And they believe that, you know, if there is such a correlation, then recommendations could be made in terms of policy, that sort of thing. So it seemed to be again, you have a copy of that if you want to read that. And I believe their particular proposal was more in like just a narrative format. It wasn't like in a table or anything like that. You know, it was just kind of like just a written 1-page explanation of what they wanted to do, but it still hit all the good points. Yes, and once again, to emphasize it, that particular proposal They explained why they were interested in it. It was short, concise, and they also explained why they want to investigate that. And here you can see when their experience was finished and their presentation was judged. And once again, the research questions seemed to really make an impact upon the judges. And as a consequence of that, they scored very well also. Some of the other particular proposals last year that were good, just as an example, I gave you a third example. I think it's one of these, but I think you get the point of what we think is a good proposal. And again, we don't say no to a proposal, so you know that's part of the competition, is to come up with something interesting on your own and make recommendations from that. But some of the other ones that fared well, you can see up here, correlation between economic policies, decisions, and economic growth success. What is the return on investment if one decides to go to a community college, a four-year college, or just enter the workforce upon graduation? So those are what we felt kind of like nice proposals. They're interesting, and they did well as a result of that. So once again, it comes down to really engaging your team, coming up with something that's really going to interest them, do some investigations, come up with your data sets. Again, we're here to help. We can help point you in a direction of certain resources. And once you have those resources, ask yourself, what's in your data? I like that picture.
What can you tell us about the judges? Where are they from? What's their background? You know, because that helps us frame how do we approach the problem. Believe me, you want to know, what do they know?
I know some of the judges, but okay, so many of them they work in information technology areas, academics, and we're allowed to reveal who these people are, Roger.
Well, their names were on the thing.
Oh, okay, okay. I wasn't sure.
I just don't, you know, the
So,
reason
yeah.
is if you've got a person that's just focused on data, you want to make sure you have really clean, crisp data. If you have a person who's more, you know, whatever. I'm just trying to understand,
Yeah.
how do you get these people and what's the manifestation?
So right now, I mean, like Matt said, right now, the mix is, a lot of them are from the university academic, so University of Pittsburgh and CMU professors of information sciences, data analytics, things like that. Some from the private companies like IBM and Oracle and the companies that we can get. And a couple are educators by background, so have been involved in high school education their whole lives and understand the challenges. The one thing I do want to say is that the judges are very sensitive to the fact that we're not looking to turn these students into data scientists. So this is not about doing a very high advanced sophisticated level of data analysis. It's really more about, for their age group, keeping that in mind, did they do interesting analysis and connect the dots and draw conclusions? So their expectations are very age appropriate in that regard.
And I think if you can see some of the judging areas, that it's, despite the heaviest weight being attributed to the research question, it's the experience itself too that results in a very good experience here and finish, because a lot of this is just sort of the journey that they're taking together, and how engaging is that, and how do they communicate it, and how is that data being visualized. So that factors into it as well.
Yeah, and you can see in their responses that where their thinking is different because of the way they're rating the kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I asked the question.
Yes. Yeah.
You see that range of scores in communication, it's not insignificant.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we
For three
have
people.
a variety of, judges, so that we get, capture that kind of differences. And they're also, sort of, I would say that they also learn through that experience in terms of, how, what their demand or expectations should be.
Yeah, one thing I'll just add, I understand where you're coming from to target we're doing a lot to try and spread different backgrounds, different portions, to get a blended mix of people and skills and experiences to the scoring, so that you don't have somebody who's more lenient.
Yeah, I'm not challenging anybody's integrity whatsoever. I was just trying to understand the scope of what we as educators should provide our students in preparing to address. Because these are the kind of things that the range of judges are gonna be looking for. That was it.
Yeah. No, I understand.
I fully trust their integrity.
Yeah, what I caution against is trying to be too targeted
Yes, I understand.
towards a particular judge
Yep.
background.
Yep.
Which goes to your question, because that could be down the line.